What's up? Do you want to be wealthy? Do you just idolize people who have money? Do you just wish you could wake up one day and be one of those breakout overnight successes and all of a sudden you have $1 billion in your bank account and you just don't know how it happened? It was like, whoa, well, you're in luck. Because today we're going to talk
Whoa.
about,
Was that Joey Lawrence from Blossom?
I can't believe you
You
remember
become
that.
a millionaire and you're Joey Lawrence from Blossom?
Yeah, that's what happens. He's
Whoa.
probably rocking it. Whoa. I can't even remember that show. God, because it was like there's one of two shows you could watch when it existed.
Yeah.
Remember? That was it.
Yeah.
So you even watched it at all. Anyway, um, yeah. So today we're going to talk about can you live a good life with no money? This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Daniel Ruby. Randy, what's up, Randy?
Yo, Danny, this is a great question because nowadays
It is.
people do all kinds of stuff for money.
I would say almost everything in some cases, or at least that's on
Sometimes,
their mind. Yeah,
sometimes they have like passive income working for Uber just so they can make more money.
I know, right? Grinding. Dude, that is the most misused term ever.
Yeah.
Like it's so
Yep.
ridiculous. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, but this is the interesting thing because like I wonder this all the time. Like, you know, I feel like especially in like the United States, like we're stuck between these two forces of like one, everybody tells you you need more money and you should have more money, and that's how you validate yourself, and that's how you're awesome, and that means you won or whatever the hell. On the other hand, you also want to be happy and have a good life. And like, those two are not necessarily compatible, which is interesting to me. You think they would be, right? You would think like it always like I give you an example. When I was younger, right? And I remember reading like when Facebook came out and like when Mark Zuckerberg when the company like first went public, this was way back, when, and they were like, he's worth, you know, this crazy number. The second it went public, he was worth so much money. And I was like, dude, in my head, I was like, why don't you just cash out and just be done with this thing, and like go do whatever the hell you want to do. It always surprised me, but I guess but that's also the kind of people they are, right? Like you get in this situation, you don't want you're afraid to leave because you're afraid to get more, or that other people might make money from what you made or something. Like weird.
Yeah. And you know what? It's people it's people like that who create jobs that the government loves that are actually probably the reason why most people are so miserable.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about this the other day because my grandfather was a janitor, and being a janitor, he was able to take care of the family. Like
Oh, back
he
then,
didn't
yeah,
have to
totally.
work. Yeah, he didn't have to work three jobs. He was a janitor, and in his spare time, he played like accordion for some. I'm sure he made some extra money doing that. But like, it wasn't like they were able to afford cars and a house and food and raise children and all this stuff from just working as a janitor. It was a normal job. Like
Yeah.
nowadays people are like, "Oh, I'm not going to work as a janitor. I'm not going to work as a trash man. I'm not going to work as a teacher. You don't make I'm going to be a CEO. I'm going to be a freelancer. I'm going to be a what the heck's
Yeah.
it called? Influencer.
Entrepreneur.
Like
Yeah.
all this dumb stuff. It's because well, primarily because these guys like Zuck, like Bill Gates, like whoever who people worship, they can't share the wealth.
No,
Yeah.
not even a little.
They've done an
Yeah.
amazing job at making more money for themselves, but they've made the world a worse place in doing so.
Oh, dude. Well, look at like, and this, I mean, this is a big thing that happened, like, too. Like, we saw this transition in the 80s. Companies focusing on every quarter raising profits and raising their stock price rather than long-term goals. And we saw like R&Ds declined. And like, I read a report recently that said, like, it's back in like the 40s, 50s, 60s, most companies about like I think it was like roughly like 20 to 30% of profits would go to shareholders and the upper executives. Now it's 95%. So think about that.
Hmm.
If you were doing 20, 25%, say, you have 75% of profits and left over for R&D, for all these other, for, employees, for benefits, for all kinds of stuff. Now you have nothing. And all they're looking for is ways to then cut more so they can increase. So yeah, it's ridiculous. I remember one of the uh, one of the kids of one of the old CEOs from Disney criticized the company because apparently back like when her grandfather was like running it, Like even like the people that were like cleaning the park or like wearing the costumes, that was like a middle class job. They had benefits, they had like time off, they could like
Hmm.
afford a house, they could afford a car, they could, and
Hmm.
now they make like what, like whatever minimum wages, and that's a huge
Yeah.
difference.
That's a good point because middle class back then used to mean you could afford a house, a car, all that stuff. Nowadays they call people middle class, but really it's like poverty and extreme poverty in America because most people can't
Yeah.
afford a house. They're paying for a mortgage that they definitely can't afford. They're paying
Well,
for a
dude, like
car that
what
they
is
definitely can't afford. They're working multiple jobs. And back then it wasn't husband and wife working. It was one person
one
working.
person? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy part. But we've
Hmm.
devalued labor so much. And because of this,
Yeah.
and you look at it like, gee, I forget what the statistic is now, but it's something like less than like 30 people have the combined wealth of like the bottom 90% of the globe, which is
Hmm.
insane when you think
Yeah.
about it. Like that's just
But
such a
you know what else?
concentration.
Those people are miserable.
Yeah, they're
Because
totally
here's the
that's the
thing.
crazy thing.
Yeah. So this book, Your Money or Your Life, they talk about how they've done all these conferences across the world, and they always poll people in their audience. They're like, how much money do you make? And are you happy? And how much money would you need to be happy? And it doesn't matter how much money you make, you always think you need at least roughly about 50% more in order to be happy. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter if you're making pennies or you're making tons of money. It's the same thing all across the board. And here's the crazy thing is that like most of these people who are making a ton of money, number one, they have a disease comparable to alcoholism because they just can't stop.
oh yeah,
And
dude, look at Elon Musk when he
number
bought Twitter, was sleeping there,
yeah.
like
And
sleeping in
and
the
number
office. Yeah.
two, and number two, they have such a big ego, they're embarrassed that they've put in all this time and energy and they're still miserable. Like Will Smith put it perfectly in his biography, where he was saying, I thought that once I had money, I would finally be happy, but then I got money and I realized the problem was me.
Yeah, you still are the same person. And it's funny because like, well, what's funny is like you look at like all the interviews, like Jim Carrey had a famous interview where he talked about that. Like all these people that have not just a little bit of money. Like Will Smith and Jim Carrey don't have a little bit. They have quite a lot of money. They're very wealthy
Hmm.
by all standards. I mean, they're not Elon Musk or Bezos, but they're very wealthy. But like all these people are
There's no
miserable.
different. Honestly, there's no difference
You know?
between any of that stuff because whether you have 10 million or whether you have 10 billion, you can really just buy anything you want at that point.
Yeah. And
And
people are going to
really,
treat you
it's
basically
the
the same.
difference like whether you get triple stitched or quadruple stitched. It's like it
Yeah.
really doesn't matter.
Your parents are
And
going to last a long time.
yeah, like I mean a whole bunch of people who I know who are rich. They're like, the best car you can buy is like a GMC Suburban or something. No, what was it? I don't know, like a Chevy, I don't know. So anyways, the best food you can eat is Cheesecake Factory. These aren't like extravagant cars. Like I know a dude who bought a Lamborghini and he's like, I bought it because I thought that I would get tons of girls, but it's only old men and little boys who come and talk to me now
Because they
because
don't care
they're the
about
ones
it.
interested in the car. Yeah.
We could think about it. It's impractical as hell. And I think that's what people forget too. Like for most things, like when you get to the ultra expensive stuff, the value you're getting out of it for the money is so negligible because it's mostly just like name and exclusivity. It has nothing to
Hmm.
do with like quality or
And
anything.
nowadays it's not even that because people can take out credit and every one of these exclusive brands offers some BS little thing for like $100. So now
Yeah.
everybody has this little BS like Louis Vuitton keychain.
Yeah.
And and plus they have all the knockoff stuff. So you're just wearing the same thing as everybody else. And they make these fashions look absolutely absurd just so that you have to only an idiot who spent $50,000 on a costume would wear something outrageous as that.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, no kidding.
But that kind of it's funny because that's how it's always been. It's always this attempt to be like I swear it's always this attempt for self-validation and for happiness that never just exists. And I used to think that way
Hmm.
too, like when I was younger, and I realized as I got older, like I was like don't get me wrong, like yeah, I live in the United States. Like I totally agree you need money to live here. You do.
Hmm.
There's no getting around it. That's just the way society's structured these days. But there's definitely like a limit to how much you actually need. And like to
Hmm.
be really happy. And like I usually think of it like try to think of like what kind of life do I really not like fuck
Yeah.
how much money because like what's more important to me is my time, is hanging out with people, doing things that I enjoy. not hating my life, all of that.
Hmm.
Because so many people
Yeah.
now too that even have good jobs, they're just fucking miserable because the jobs are miserable. Like
Hmm.
it's
Yeah. I mean, really, you just need to figure out, well, I don't know. So one thing that I did want to say, before I go proselytizing about how to
yeah,
save
sure,
money
go
and
ahead.
everything like that. So like when I was in my early 20s, I followed this guy on YouTube who was worth at the time 10 million. I think now he's worth in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But he was roughly worth about $10 million dollars. And I
Who
just
was
ran
it?
into him, Alex Becker. And so I ran into him by a chance on in Dallas, Texas. Just he lives down there. I was down there for a conference. I
Oh,
was just walking around Midtown, ran into him by chance, and I was like, oh my gosh, like dude, because he was the first like what I considered a really rich person who I met, and
oh,
I
okay,
was
yeah. So you
and
remember
I
it
was like
very clearly.
I was like, dude, like, what's it like to be rich? What's it feel like to be rich? Because like for me, that was like the thing. I was two hundred and fifty
Yeah,
thousand dollars in debt. I was like,
everybody's struggling
what
to
is
get
it?
more.
I was like, what does it feel like to be rich? And he's like, it feels the same as it did to be broke. And
Yeah,
all of a sudden, my brain just snapped, and I was like, what? Like,
yeah,
you got to be kidding me. You got $10 million dollars and you say it's no different than being broke? And he's like, yep. I was like, holy cow. Like that moment there changed my life because all of a sudden I was just like, well, then what's the point? Like, sure, you can
yeah.
earn money so that you can live a life that you want, but having money isn't going to make your life any
It
better at
doesn't do
all.
anything. And the funny part is, I think that's such a good example too of like he he was probably living the same way we are with this lie that's been told to us that you are a valuable person, a successful person, you're a happy person if you have more money than
Well, and
everybody else.
also that's his whole personality, and that's how he makes money. He's telling people they need to make more money.
Yeah, which is even funnier.
Yeah,
Oh God. But yeah, but if you told him that otherwise, that would just destroy his whole market, right? But yeah, but
yeah.
think about it, dude, that's the reality. Like it's funny because I think that's what happens to so many people. They think if I just like Will Smith said, right? As long as I get this, then I'll be happy. And then they realize that that wasn't the problem, and it never was. And I think that's the scary part because like we're taught to believe this from such a young age, and all the media, everything throws it in our face about how like awesome these people are, how much they have, how great they are, how happy, how they can do jump in their jet and go, take a 30-minute ride for no reason or whatever. And the reality is that they're miserable. And like it really does change how you think about it, I think, when you realize that that's
Yeah,
not what's going to do it.
especially when you look at the happiness index across different countries, and the poorest countries consistently are the happiest ones.
Oh yeah, we're like
And
ranked
it's and it's not
like
like
one of the
it's not
lowest.
just because like, well, they don't know what money can buy. It's not that they're happy. It's just because they don't have all the BS that comes along with money, and you're literally just get stuck on this treadmill going after something that brings you no fulfillment. So you're just wasting all your time
Yeah.
doing this thing to get something that won't make you any happier.
And the sad part is nowadays, in order to get that money, 90% of the time you're doing something that's going to hurt other people. And
Hmm.
so you also have that on your conscience, like that you fired 10,000 people just so that your stock would go up quarter of a percent.
Yeah.
That you ruined lives, that you polluted, all these things that you're doing to earn that money, you have to live with them too. And I think that's the other side that people forget.
Yeah.
Like,
Plus, what we talked about a while ago, how like none of our jobs actually make are something that we can actually relate to benefiting our life. Like we're all just doing this thing so we can earn some money. So then with that money, we can go buy some food from somebody else who killed the animal or the plants.
yeah,
And so it's like there's all these intermediate steps. Like I was thinking about this also the other day, where I was like, had you have lived a few hundred years or thousands of years before, like you would have just been like chilling outside and trying to stay out of the sun when it's like sunny and trying to stay out of the rain when it's rainy and trying to stay away from like predators when they're hunting. But
yeah.
like otherwise you would just be chilling outside. And then eventually you would get really hungry and you'd be like, man, I want to eat. And it would be hard to like get some food. And you'd have to go and it would be like a puzzle. It would be a game for you. And if you lose, you die. So, game
I
over.
say,
But if you win, you feel incredible.
yeah.
So it's like
Well,
we've lost in life essentially.
Well, that's exactly basically the premise of Das Kapital and Marx's socialism is that like before labor became a commodity, right? when we had needs, we had to figure out how to satisfy them and do it. So we kept like we would realize our skills and our powers all the time in reality. Like if you needed a table, you'd make a table, you'd build a house. Like think of like the pioneers who went out west, right? They had nothing. They had to do all that themselves. There's so much self-validation there in survival and living. You can make things as nice as you wanted, specific to your needs. You're not answering to anybody else. Like, and I think once labor became a commodity, that's all gone. Now your work, the principal thing you do and the way you realize your powers, you're not even completing anything. Most people do one small part of something all the time, the same thing. They don't even get to see the finished product. And that's true whether you're in a factory or whether you're in an office, it doesn't matter. Like most people work on one small part of something, not the whole thing. And so you
Yeah,
never get to, you never have that satisfaction of I did that. Like I actually completed that thing. And I think that's one of the biggest downfalls of this system too, and why so many people are unhappy.
definitely, definitely. So it
And that's
brings us
crazy.
back to, can you have a good life without money? If you're broke, if you're poor, and I would argue, yes,
You
100%. I would actually think, I would actually say, because okay, yeah, I would say that you're closer to living a good life if you don't have the distraction of money.
Yeah.
And you're like, but why? Like my good life, I need a Lambo and I need
Yeah.
I need Louis
17
Vuitton and I
houses.
need, yeah, all that stuff. And it's like, fine, go get it and then be miserable. And, all I have to say is, you know, Justin Bieber was depressed. Jim Carrey was depressed. Every single person who has money was, as soon as they got money, they got so depressed. But fine. I mean, it's going to be different for you. So clearly go do it.
Yeah,
But
it will be
yeah,
though. You know that. I
yeah.
mean, come on.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not
But
me.
it's like I always remember I think they attribute it to Ben Franklin, but how we always attribute sayings to somebody.
Ben Franklin.
How like, yeah, how it's like if you make $100 and spend $101, you'll be miserable. But if you make 100 and spend 99, you'll be happy. And that, in the essence, is how simple it is in life. How, like, if you are spending more than you're earning, you're just going to be stressed and pretty much miserable. But if you have an excess, then, uh, I mean, you may not be super happy, but at least you don't have that stress. And so many people are like,
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't earn enough money. Like, I have to work 5 jobs to do this. And it's like, well, there's two parts to the equation. One is how much you earn. So, yeah, try and earn as much as you can. But the other part of the equation is how much you
How much you
spend.
spend. Yeah.
Yeah, and you need to keep an eye on that. And for people who have trouble with that, a budget is the most annoying way to figure out how much you're spending and to actually have some agency with your money.
You know what the other thing is too, and I think this is things people forget a lot, which is when we work at a job where we're miserable, we're going to spend more money to try and make ourselves happy with little purchases. Because a lot of people, especially in the US, buy stuff because they're depressed and they're trying to make themselves happy or they're upset. And so, like, if you also change things in your lives to be better and more suited to you, you're also less likely to even feel the urge to go out and waste money on stuff.
That's a great point. And it brings me to another thought because we both recently changed careers. And, people are always saying, well, like, I need to make more money, save more money. What's the best investment? Do I buy gold? Do I buy
Yeah.
real estate? Do I
Crypto.
buy, yeah, whatever. And it's like, actually, the best investment is investing in yourself. And I notice this so much now because, like, for instance, nowadays, when I buy myself a book on programming, it is the best feeling ever. And these
Yeah.
books, they're like, $20 to $60, a fraction of what I had to pay for some BS biology textbook that they made an edition every single year, and I had to have that edition for class
And
that
they're like
cost three
seven
or
hundred
four hundred
dollars.
dollars. Oh
Yeah,
gosh,
dude, they're
now they're probably
insane.
700. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like the amount of satisfaction that can be had from developing yourself and learning that stuff is incredible.
But that's just what Mark said, right? Because then you're actually learning skills and you're proving you can do them in the real world. There's so much more self-value in that than in just buying anything random, right? And I think that's the
Mhm.
hard part that people have to learn. That just also takes time because it's like you have to like deprogram from all the BS that you've been surrounded by and forced on you constantly. And that's hard to do, you know?
It is an interesting thing, this whole concept of time and how no one is patient anymore.
God, no,
Because
not at all.
yeah,
But we're not.
but it's something where like if you have a long enough, like for instance, with us and changing careers, it's not something that happened overnight. It's a multiple year process. But like, looking back, you can
But
see,
when they
yeah,
tell
it's
the story, it'll be overnight.
yeah, exactly.
That's
Like
the thing.
these guys were working jobs they hated, and just like that, they changed. It was simple and whatever. And yeah, but
One
it's
day
never
in
like
March, they
that.
said no. And then
Yeah.
bam,
But it's
they're
but it's
experts.
cool. Yeah. It's cool to be able to look back and see that it took a while because now I can use that and I can look forward to these things that I want to accomplish and I can be like, hey, 5 years, 10 years, why the heck not? That
Totally
seems
doable.
doable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's the other thing I think people forget is you could do anything. You really
hmm
can. Like you just have to commit yourself to it in time. And I think that's the thing. We get so frustrated because it's so the expectation is for now always. So yeah, I
hmm
think that's some good helpful tips. Anything else you want to add on the issue?
Yeah, oh man, if only I was thinking of it beforehand. Anyways, if you have problems with money, because lots of people have problems with money.
Yes.
Okay. So, Financial Peace University by Dave Ramsey will help you like stop the whole messed up life that you're living right now. And
Yeah.
then there's another one. I wish I could remember it, but I just can't remember it right now. And uh oh, Life and Air. That's it. It's like Millionaire, but life instead of mill.
Nice.
Life and
I
Air
agree.
is
Yeah.
another great book because it breaks it down really simply for you, and it's more of a thing for how to actually design a life you want to live. Because it,
Which is way
oh,
more
and
important.
the last book. Once you've done those two books, okay, the last book that you must read is Die with Zero because this is the mistake that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all these guys and Warren Buffett and all these guys are making. They're going to die with so much money left over. They're already in a pickle. They can't spend their money fast enough. Okay. They're
There's no
giving
way.
it away. They can't
It's
spend it fast enough.
impossible.
Yep.
Impossible to spend it. Yeah.
Yep. They actually would be the biggest losers in terms of life efficiency. They've
Yeah.
wasted their whole entire life because essentially they've any time that they've spent working, they've wasted essentially actually living life. And so in that sense, they're the biggest losers. And that's why you need to read Die
That's
with
what's funny
Zero.
that that's
Interesting
what's funny
book.
though too is they've lived so little life because all they've done is this one thing so much all week, every day. Like they're workaholics. So it's like crazy when you think about it.
hmm
They haven't really lived at all. It's
Dude,
insane.
they need, I mean, eventually there will be a 12-step program because even like, I forget what book I was listening to, but this, one of these psychologists who works with like famous people out in LA started to get a whole bunch of these, or not in LA, in San Francisco, started to get a whole bunch of tech people coming in to see her. And all these people suffered from like they were telling stories about how they're just like addicted to this. They need to do more and more and more and more. And she started thinking back to all of her dealing with AA and
Yeah.
like, yeah, same exact thing going on
Yeah.
process. And
And it's
yeah.
caught up, you're caught up in the community, right? In the culture and with all the values and stuff associated with it. And you gotta like free
hmm
yourself. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
hmm
But I would also say too, everybody's the same too. I think most people, especially in this country, struggle with this because we all grew up with the same ideas. We all struggle with money. We all struggle with spending. None of us are taught how to use it right. None of us are taught how to live a good life or even how to think about that. So it's like
hmm
just a mess. It really is.
Yeah. But you
Yeah.
can really, I think, I honestly think, because like, when I was in a pickle, 250,000 in debt, I read literally every book on personal finance multiple times. And out of all of them, those three books, Total Money Makeover and or Financial Peace University, Life and Air, and Die with Zero, you read those, you'll be set.
There you go. Yeah. And you
hmm
don't need money to live a good life. Or
Yeah.
at the very
Yeah,
least, need minimal.
it like teaches you how to stop the bleeding. It teaches you how to build a life you want, and then it teaches you how
Yeah.
to not mess up. That's
And
basically
those are
it.
things that's everything you need. Yeah, basically right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice. Well, there you have
Yeah.
it then. Do you need
hmm
money to be happy? This is the Existential Stoic podcast. If you like the episode, check us out on YouTube wherever we get podcasts. Like, share, subscribe. It helps us out a lot. Even leave a review. That would be awesome. We'll be back later this week with another episode. Until then, later, everybody.
Later, Danny.